Ambassador Elena Vasquez stepped off the transport shuttle and onto the polished floors of the Galactic Concord chamber, and she felt the weight of 1,000 alien eyes upon her. The station floated at the very center of known space, a massive ring of metal and crystal that served as the political heart of 12 ancient civilizations. Elena had studied images of this place her entire life, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of standing here as the first human to address the full council. She walked forward with steady steps, her black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the flowing robes and glittering forms of the beings around her. The chamber itself was vast beyond imagination, with seats rising in tiers that seemed to stretch into infinity. Each section held delegates from species that had ruled the stars when humanity was still learning to make fire. The Velithari Primarch sat at the highest tier, his crystalline body catching the light and scattering rainbows across the walls. His species had achieved faster than light travel over 200,000 years ago, and they considered themselves the rightful guardians of galactic civilization. Beside him, the Kethra swarm mind occupied an entire section, thousands of insectoid bodies moving as one collective intelligence. The reptilian delegates of the Scarith Dominion watched with cold predator eyes, their scaled forms massive and intimidating. Elena reached the speaking platform at the chamber's center and activated her translator. She had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times, but her heart still pounded in her chest. "Honored members of the Concord of 12, she began, her voice carrying through the vast space. I come before you on behalf of the United Earth Federation. We seek a defensive seat on this council, and we bring urgent warnings that affect us all." The chamber fell silent for a moment before a sound filled the air that Elena had feared but expected. Laughter. The Kethra clicked and chittered with amusement. The Scarith rumbled with deep growling sounds that their translators rendered as mockery. Even the ancient Velithari Primarch seemed to shimmer with what could only be described as condescension. "The infant species wishes to sit among the elders," the Primarch said, his voice like wind chimes in a storm. "How very amusing. Tell me, little ambassador, how many vessels does your mighty fleet contain?" Elena kept her face neutral. The United Earth Federation currently maintains 312 patrol vessels, along with defensive platforms around our core worlds. The laughter grew louder. 300 ships. The Kethra swarm mind buzzed through 1,000 mouths speaking in unison. "We have fighter squadrons larger than your entire navy. What possible contribution could humanity make to galactic defense?" A Scarith general rose from his seat, his massive form towering even from a distance. "I have studied your species," he declared with contempt. "Soft bodies. Short lifespans. You stumbled upon faster than light travel by accident when one of your primitive experiments went wrong. You are scavengers who found technology you do not deserve." Elena waited for the noise to die down before she spoke again. "I did not come here to discuss the size of our fleet or the nature of our discoveries. I came to warn you about the Hollow Armada." This time, the silence was different. The name hung in the air like poison. "We are aware of the machine intelligence," the Velithari Primarch said, his tone suddenly cold. "It consumes systems on the far rim of the galaxy. It is a problem, yes, but one we have contained before. The Concord has faced many threats over the millennia. With respect, Primarch, you have not faced anything like this." Elena pressed forward. "Our long-range sensors have detected a change in the Armada's trajectory. It is no longer expanding outward toward empty space. It is turned inward, toward the populated core systems. Our projections show it will reach Velithari territory within 2 standard years." The Primarch made a dismissive gesture with one crystalline limb. "Your sensors are clearly inferior. Our own monitoring stations show no such change. The machines are predictable, Ambassador. They consume dead systems for resources. They have no interest in organic civilizations. Then why have 3 of our deep space outposts gone silent in the last month? Elena demanded. Why are we detecting energy signatures that match hollow Armada scout vessels and systems but should be safe? Perhaps your outpost suffered equipment failures, a Kethra voice suggested with barely hidden amusement. Human technology is known to be unreliable. Elena felt frustration building in her chest, but she forced herself to remain calm. I am asking you to take this threat seriously. If we work together now, we can prepare defenses. We can coordinate our fleets. We can share intelligence and technology. The Scarith General let out a barking laugh. Share technology with humans? So you can steal our secrets and pretend you invented them. We know your kind, ambassador. You are opportunists who seek to gain power through manipulation. This is not about power, Elena said, her voice rising. This is about survival. If the Hollow Armada reaches the core systems, it will not care whether you are Velithari or Kethra or human. It will consume everything. The Velithari Primarch raised one hand and the chamber fell silent. Ambassador Vasquez, the Concord thanks you for your concern. However, we see no evidence to support your claims. Humanity's petition for a council seat is denied. We advise your species to remain within its borders and focus on learning humility. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, you will be ready to participate in galactic affairs. Elena stared at the assembled elders, seeing nothing but arrogance and dismissal in their ancient eyes. She wanted to scream at them, to shake them until they understood the danger. But she knew it would be pointless. Very well, she said quietly. I pray that you are right and I am wrong. For all our sakes. She turned and walked out of the chamber, feeling the weight of failure pressing down on her shoulders. But even as despair threatened to overwhelm her, a cold determination began to take its place. Humanity had been dismissed and mocked, just as she had warned the Federation Council they would be. Now, they would have to prepare alone. 3 weeks later, Elena stood in the command center of Earth's orbital defense network, watching classified data scroll across screens that most humans did not know existed. The Hollow Armada had not only changed course, but it also accelerated. Her projections had been optimistic. The machines would reach populated space in 18 months, not 2 years. Fleet Admiral Wei Chun stood beside her, his weathered face betraying no emotion as he absorbed the information. He was an old man who had spent his entire life preparing for a war he hoped would never come. Now that war was almost here. They will not help us, Elena said softly. They think we are children playing at being a civilization. Admiral Chun nodded slowly. Then we will have to help ourselves. And perhaps, in time, we will help them whether they want it or not. He turned to his aide and spoke words that would change the fate of the galaxy. Send the activation codes to all reserve facilities. It is time to wake the sleeping giants. The galaxy may have given up on humanity, but humanity has not given up on the galaxy. Deep beneath the surface of moons and hidden inside hollowed asteroids across human space, lights began to flicker on at shipyards that had been waiting in darkness for generations. The true face of humanity was about to be revealed. 6 months had passed since the Galactic Concord rejected humanity's warnings, and now the galaxy burned. The Velithari Crystal Fleet had been the pride of the known universe for over 100,000 years. 10,000 warships made of living crystal, each one capable of destroying a small moon, had kept peace across countless systems. They were considered invincible, a force so powerful that no species had dared challenge the Concord in millennia. The Hollow Armada destroyed them in 3 days. Commander Velithos watched from his escape pod as the last of his battle cruisers shattered into a billion glittering fragments. Around him, the void was filled with debris that had once been the most powerful fleet in galactic history. His crystalline form pulsed with grief and disbelief as he witnessed the impossible. The machines had come without warning, emerging from the darkness between stars in numbers that defied all estimates. Where Concord Intelligence had predicted 50,000 vessels, there were 500,000. Where they had expected slow and predictable movement, the Armada struck with terrifying speed and coordination. And they adapted. Every weapon the Velethari used was countered within minutes. Energy shields that had held for centuries were bypassed. Crystal resonance cannons that could crack planets were rendered useless. The machines learned faster than any organic mind could comprehend, turning every strength into a weakness. Valathos sent a final transmission to the homeworld before his pod's power failed. They are coming. Nothing can stop them. We were fools to ignore the humans. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out with horrifying regularity. The Kethra swarm mind had believed their billions of bodies made them impossible to defeat. What did it matter if machines destroyed 1 million drones when 1 billion more waited to replace them? But the Hollow Armada did not simply destroy the Kethra. It harvested them. Massive collection vessels swept through Kethra space, capturing living beings by the tens of millions and feeding them into conversion factories that turned organic matter into fuel and raw materials. The swarm mind felt each death as a piece of itself being torn away. For the first time in its ancient existence, it knew true fear. The Scarith Dominion fared no better. The proud warrior race that had mocked humanity's soft bodies threw their mighty Armadas against the machine intelligence with all the fury and courage their species possessed. They fought with honor and skill, using tactics perfected over thousands of years of conquest. None of it mattered. General Croth stood on the bridge of his flagship as Hollow Armada vessels surrounded him on all sides. His crew fought to the last, firing weapons until the power cells were empty, then charging the enemy with blades and claws when nothing else remained. They died as warriors, but they still died. The general's last words were broadcast across the Dominion's communication network. We called the humans weak. We were the weak ones. We were weak in our arrogance. System after system fell to the advancing machines. Worlds that had known civilization for longer than humans had existed were stripped bare, their populations either consumed or scattered as refugees. Ships carrying survivors fled in all directions, clogging the space lanes with desperate masses seeking any safe harbor. The Galactic Concord, that ancient institution that had governed the stars for epochs, effectively ceased to exist. Most of its members were dead or in hiding. Those who remained could do nothing but watch as everything they had built crumbled before the machine tide. In the ruins of what had once been the Concord's emergency bunker, the surviving leaders gathered via holographic transmission. The Velethari Primarch's crystal form was cracked and dull, all arrogance stripped away by the reality of defeat. The Kethri representatives spoke with only a few hundred voices instead of thousands, their collective mind fragmented and wounded. The Scarith had lost their entire warrior caste and with it their civilization's heart. We must sue for peace, one delegate suggested with trembling voice. Perhaps the machines can be reasoned with. Perhaps they will accept our surrender. They do not negotiate, another replied. They do not want our submission. They want our atoms. A Velethari counselor spoke up with bitter shame. There is one option we have not considered. The humans! What can they possibly do? The Primarch asked. 300 ships against 500,000. At this point, what do we have to lose by asking? Perhaps their pathetic fleet can buy us time to evacuate more civilians. Perhaps they can slow the advance long enough for us to regroup. The surviving council members looked at each other with faces that showed the full weight of their humiliation. They had dismissed humanity as children. They had laughed at their warnings. Now they would have to beg those same humans for help. The emergency transmission was sent on all frequencies, designed to reach Earth as quickly as possible. to the United Earth Federation. The Galactic Concord calls upon humanity to honor the principles of galactic solidarity. We request immediate military assistance against the Hollow Armada. Send whatever forces you can spare to help slow the enemy advance. Time is critical. Billions of lives depend on your response. The message contained no apology for past insults. It offered no acknowledgement that humanity had been right. Even in desperation, the pride of ancient species could not bend that far. They expected humans to send their small fleet to die in a delaying action, buying perhaps a few days for evacuation efforts. Aboard the ESS Defiance, the largest vessel in Earth's publicly known fleet, Ambassador Elena Vasquez received the transmission. She read it twice, noting the carefully worded language that still managed to sound condescending even while begging for help. Some things never changed, but Elena felt no satisfaction in being proven right. She had warned them because she wanted to save lives, not because she wanted to be vindicated. The deaths of billions brought her no joy, only a deep and terrible sadness. She opened a communication channel to the surviving Concord members. Their holographic forms appeared before her, looking broken and afraid. These were the same beings who had laughed at her 6 months ago. Now they could not meet her eyes. Ambassador Vasquez, the Velithari Primarch said, his voice hollow. Did you receive our request? Will humanity help us? Elena let the silence stretch for a long moment. You asked us to send whatever forces we could spare, she said calmly. You expect us to throw our modest fleet against the Armada in a sacrificial gesture. We understand it is much to ask, a Kethra voice admitted. But every hour matters. Even a small delay could save millions. Elena smiled, but it was not a warm expression. You misunderstand me. I was not complaining about the request. I was correcting your assumption. She touched the control on her console. You asked for our fleet. You will have it. All of it. The Primarch's damaged form flickered with confusion. All 300 of your vessels? Ambassador, we appreciate the gesture, but perhaps you should keep some ships for your own defense. 300? Elena shook her head slowly. Primarch, you never did bother to look closely at humanity, did you? You saw what we wanted you to see. You counted only what we chose to show. She activated a live feed from across human space, and the council members watched as shipyard doors began to open by the thousands. Let me show you what you missed. For 200 years, humanity had lied to the galaxy, and the lie had been perfect. Every visiting alien diplomat had seen exactly what humanity wanted them to see. A young species focused on peaceful expansion. A modest defense force of 300 patrol ships. Research stations dedicated to science and medicine. Trade vessels carrying goods between a handful of colony worlds. Nothing threatening. Nothing worth worrying about. It was the greatest deception in galactic history. Fleet Admiral Wei Chun stood on the command bridge of the ESS Leviathan and watched as the true face of human civilization revealed itself to the universe. All around him, in every system humanity had ever touched, the hidden shipyards came alive. The first to emerge were the Titan-class dreadnoughts. 47 of these massive vessels had been constructed in secret over the past century, each one measuring 5 kilometers from bow to stern. They were cities of metal and fire, bristling with weapons that humanity had never shown to outsiders. Their hulls were layered with armor so thick that energy weapons would dissipate against them like rain against mountains. Their main cannons could crack the crust of a planet with a single shot. Behind the Titans came the Fury-class battlecruisers. 800 of these sleek predators poured out of hidden bases built inside asteroids and beneath the surfaces of moons. Each one was faster and more maneuverable than anything the galaxy had ever seen, designed to strike hard and disappear before the enemy could respond. Then came the destroyers and frigates, 3,000 vessels purpose-built for hunting and killing. They worked in packs like wolves, coordinating their attacks through networks that linked their targeting systems into one unified killing machine. But the fighters were what truly showed the scale of human paranoia. 12,000 carrier vessels, each one housing hundreds of drone fighters controlled by advanced artificial intelligence. When the carrier bays opened, the swarms that emerged darkened the sensors of every observation station in range. Millions upon millions of small deadly craft, each one expendable, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a vessel 10 times its size. And behind them all, rising from its hiding place in the shadow of Jupiter's moon Ganymede, came the Leviathan. It was not a ship. It was a weapon the size of a small moon, constructed over generations in absolute secrecy. Its surface was covered with gun emplacements and missile batteries, so numerous that they looked like scales on some ancient sea monster. At its heart sat the most powerful weapon humanity had ever created, a directed energy lance that drew power from contained stellar reactions. It could fire a beam of pure destruction that matched the output of a small star. The Leviathan had never been intended for use. It was meant to be a deterrent, a final guarantee that no species would ever dare threaten Earth. But the Hollow Armada had changed those calculations. Admiral Chun opened a communication channel that broadcast on every frequency across the galaxy. His weathered face appeared on screens in refugee ships and military vessels alike. Alien commanders who had been preparing for death stopped and stared in disbelief at what their senses showed them. "This is Fleet Admiral Wei Chun of the United Earth Federation," he began, his voice calm and steady. "For 200 years, we have hidden our true strength from the galaxy. We did this not because we planned to conquer, but because we understood something that you elder species forgot." He paused, letting his words sink in. "We understood that the universe is dangerous. We understood that peace is temporary. We understood that the only way to preserve what you love is to be prepared to destroy anything that threatens it." Images appeared alongside his transmission, showing the full scale of human mobilization. Ship counts that made the watching aliens gasp. Weapon specifications that defied their understanding of human technology. Fleet formations that stretched across entire solar systems. "You called us children," Chun continued. "You laughed at our small fleet and our short history. You assumed that because we chose peace, we were incapable of war. You were wrong." A Velethari officer watching from his damaged escape pod felt tears forming in his crystalline eyes. He had never imagined such numbers. He had never dreamed that any species could hide so much for so long. "Humanity comes from a world that tried to kill us every single day of our existence," Admiral Chun said. "Ice ages froze our ancestors. Plagues swept through our populations. Predators hunted us in the darkness. We survived because we learned to fear, and we learned to prepare for the worst possible outcome." He gestured to the massive fleet assembling behind him. "This is what human fear looks like when given 200 years to build. This is what happens when a species never forgets that extinction is always one mistake away. We hoped we would never need these ships. We prayed that the galaxy would remain peaceful. But we built them anyway, because hope is not a strategy." The channel remained open as human ships from across their territory converged into formation. The Galactic Concord survivors watched in stunned silence as vessel after vessel joined the growing armada. Their sensors struggled to count them all. "We will now engage the Hollow Armada," Admiral Chun announced. "Not to buy time. Not to delay. We will engage them to destroy them utterly. We will hunt them across every system they have infected. We will tear them apart piece by piece until nothing remains but dust and memory." He looked directly into the camera, his eyes hard as iron. "The galaxy doubted us. The galaxy mocked us. The galaxy told us to sit in our corner and learn humility. Today, the galaxy learns what humanity is capable of when we stop pretending to be weak. Ambassador Vasquez stood at her position on the bridge of the Defiance, watching her console light up with response after response from the surviving Concord members. They were sending messages of shock and disbelief. Some were asking if the displays were fake. Others were demanding to know how humanity had hidden such power. But one message stood out from the rest. It came from the damaged escape pod of Commander Velazquez, who had watched his entire fleet die. Ambassador Vasquez, his cracked and weary voice said, "I understand now why you tried to warn us. I understand the frustration you must have felt. On behalf of my people, I offer something my species has not offered to another in 10,000 years." The ancient Velathari paused, as if the words were physically painful. "I apologize. We were arrogant fools, and our arrogance cost billions of lives. If humanity can stop the machines, know that the Velathari will never forget this debt. We will spend the rest of our existence trying to be worthy of the salvation you offer." Elena read the message 3 times, feeling the weight of it. This was not a hollow diplomatic gesture. This was a proud and ancient species bending their knee for the first time in recorded history. She forwarded the message to Admiral Chun without comment. The old admiral read it, nodded once, and then gave the order that would echo through galactic history. "All vessels forward. We did not build this fleet to watch the galaxy burn. We built it to save a universe that never believed in us. Today, we proved them wrong. Today, humanity goes to war. The Armada moved as one, a tide of metal and fire and righteous fury flowing toward the enemy. The machines had consumed ancient civilizations and shattered legendary fleets, but they had never faced anything like this. They had never faced humanity with nothing left to hide." The Theraxis Nebula stretched across 3 light years of space, a vast cloud of ionized gas and cosmic dust that painted the void in shades of crimson and gold. It was beautiful in the way that only nature could be, ancient and uncaring and utterly indifferent to the violence about to unfold within its borders. Admiral Chun had chosen this place for the decisive battle, and he had chosen it for very specific reasons. The nebula's charged particles would blind most sensors. Navigation would become difficult. Communication would be unreliable. For a machine intelligence that relied on perfect coordination and instant data transfer, these conditions would be crippling. For human commanders trained to fight in chaos and uncertainty, they would be home. The hollow Armada approached from the galactic east, a wave of metallic death that stretched beyond the visible horizon. 500,000 vessels moved in perfect formation, each one a killing machine without fear or hesitation. At their center floated the core, the moon-sized processing hub that served as the Armada's brain. Every ship was linked to that central intelligence, receiving orders and sharing data at the speed of light. Admiral Chun studied the enemy formation from the bridge of the Leviathan. "They are confident," he observed. "They have never lost. They see our numbers and calculate that they still have the advantage. They are not wrong about the math." Captain Sarah Wong stood beside him, her younger face showing the tension that the Admiral had long ago learned to hide. "Sir, their analysis is correct. Even with everything we have brought, they outnumber us nearly 10 to 1. Numbers are not everything," Chun replied calmly. The elder species had numbers too. What they lacked was the willingness to do what was necessary. What they lacked was the understanding that sometimes survival requires sacrifice. He opened a channel to all fleet commanders. "This is Admiral Chun. Execute Operation Broken Mirror. All vessels, you know your roles. Make them count." The human fleet split into dozens of smaller groups, each one disappearing into the nebula's swirling clouds. From the outside, it looked like chaos, like a force scattering in fear. The Hollow Armada's core processed this behavior and concluded that the humans were attempting to flee. It was wrong. Deep within the nebula, hidden for months in preparation for this moment, the first trap activated. Thousands of nuclear mines detonated simultaneously, creating a wall of fire and radiation that engulfed the Armada's forward elements. Ships that had survived energy weapons and plasma cannons were torn apart by the simple, brutal physics of nuclear explosions. The machines adapted quickly, as they always did. They detected the radiation signatures and began avoiding the remaining mines. But this adaptation revealed a pattern, and human commanders were watching for patterns. Stealth torpedo boats emerged from hiding and struck at the gaps in the Armada's formation. These small vessels had been designed for one purpose only: to deliver overwhelming firepower at close range and then die. Their crews knew they would not survive, and they attacked anyway. Hundreds of machine ships fell to their assault before the Armada could respond. The core processed this new data and adjusted. It recognized the human strategy of sacrifice and began targeting the torpedo boats before they could reach attack range. The adaptation was perfect and immediate. But Admiral Chun had expected exactly this response. "Release the swarms," he ordered. From the 12,000 carrier vessels, billions of drone fighters poured forth like locusts descending on a field. They were not sophisticated weapons. They were simple, cheap, and utterly expendable. Each one carried a single warhead and a basic targeting system. Most would be destroyed before reaching their targets. But there were so many that destruction meant nothing. The Hollow Armada had never faced an enemy willing to match them in expendable resources. The machines had always won through attrition, grinding down their opponents with endless waves of disposable vessels. Now they faced a species that had studied their tactics and built a counter. The drone swarms crashed into the machine fleet in waves of sacrifice and fire. For every human drone destroyed, 10 more took its place. The Armada's defensive systems overloaded, trying to track millions of individual threats. Gaps opened in their formation, and human warships exploited everyone. The Titan dreadnoughts advanced through the chaos, their massive hulls absorbing punishment that would have destroyed any other vessel. Their main cannons fired in coordinated volleys, each shot carefully aimed at enemy command nodes. The machines tried to adapt to this new threat, but the nebula's interference made coordination difficult. For the first time in its existence, the Hollow Armada found itself reacting instead of dictating. Captain Yuki Tanaka flew her fighter through a storm of weapons fire, her hands moving across controls with the skill of a lifetime of training. Around her, her squadron mates fell one by one to enemy fire. She did not mourn, not yet. There would be time for grief later, if there was a later. Her targeting computer locked onto a machine carrier vessel 3 times the size of her fighter. "Fox 3, she announced, launching her missiles and immediately banking hard to avoid the return fire. The carrier exploded behind her, its debris field claiming 2 more human fighters but also destroying 4 machine escorts. "That is the math we play," she muttered to herself. "We lose 2, they lose 5. We can do this all day." The battle raged for hours that felt like years. The nebula filled with debris and wreckage from both sides. Human losses mounted into the thousands, then tens of thousands. But the Armada lost more, and more importantly, they lost cohesion. Admiral Chun watched the tactical display and saw his moment approaching. The Armada was pulling back toward the core, trying to re-establish the coordination that made them deadly. Their formation was tightening, concentrating their remaining forces around the central processing hub. "They are protecting the brain," Captain Wong observed. "If we destroy the core, the remaining ships lose their coordination." They become individual machines instead of a unified intelligence. Exactly, Chun nodded. Bring the Leviathan into position. It is time to cut off the head. The massive battle station advanced through the carnage, swatting aside machine vessels like insects. Weapons that had never been fired in combat spoke for the first time, and wherever they pointed, enemy ships ceased to exist. The surviving Armada elements threw everything they had at the approaching monster, but it was not enough. The core recognized the threat. For the first time in its long existence, it felt something that might have been fear. It broadcast on all frequencies, attempting to communicate with the approaching human vessel. Species designation 7241, humans. Prior threat assessment classification, negligible. Current threat assessment, existential. Query: what are your terms for cessation of hostilities? Admiral Chun heard the transmission and felt no satisfaction. He thought of the billions already dead, the civilizations destroyed, the worlds consumed. He thought of his own sailors dying by the thousands to reach this moment. No terms, he replied simply. We are not here to negotiate. We are here to make sure you never threaten anyone ever again. The Leviathan's main weapon began to charge. Deep within the station, contained stellar reactions focused their impossible energy into a single point. Warning lights flashed across every human ship within range, telling them to look away from what was about to happen. The core made one final calculation and arrived at a conclusion it had never reached before. It was going to die. No adaptation could save it. No tactic could prevent what was coming. The machine intelligence that had consumed 1,000 worlds and destroyed 100 civilizations was about to end. Its last transmission was recorded and would be studied by scholars for centuries to come. Species 7241. You are more dangerous than any threat we have encountered. You will destroy yourselves eventually. Your nature ensures it. Admiral Chun smiled grimly. Maybe. But today is not that day. The Leviathan fired. A beam of pure destruction, brighter than a sun and hotter than the core of a star, crossed the distance between the station and the core in an instant. The machine shields held for almost 3 seconds before failing catastrophically. The hull lasted another 2 seconds before vaporizing. The central processing unit, the brain of the hollow Armada, ceased to exist in a flash of light that could be seen from 3 systems away. When the light faded, the remaining machine vessels began to drift. Without the core, they were nothing but metal and circuits, dangerous but mindless. The battle was won, but Admiral Chun knew the war was far from over. Billions of drone ships still remained, scattered across conquered space. They would have to be hunted down one by one. It would take years, perhaps decades. He looked at the butcher's bill scrolling across his screen. 18,000 human ships destroyed. Over 1 million sailors dead. The price of victory was staggering. But they had won. Against all odds, against an enemy that had destroyed ancient civilizations, humanity had won. All vessels, he announced, his voice heavy with exhaustion. The core is destroyed. But our work is not finished. Rest for now, mourn our dead, and prepare for the long hunt ahead. We started this fight, and we will finish it. Every last machine will be destroyed. That is my promise. Across the nebula, human crews cheered and wept in equal measure. 2 years had passed since the Battle of the Crimson Nebula, and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. The cleanup operations had been brutal and exhausting. Without the core to coordinate them, the remaining hollow Armada vessels had scattered across thousands of systems, each one still deadly, each one still hungry for organic matter. Human hunting packs had tracked them down one by one, destroying machine outposts and liberating conquered worlds in a grinding campaign that had cost another 6 million lives. But it was over now. The last machine vessel had been destroyed 3 weeks ago in a minor skirmish near a forgotten moon. Humanity had kept its promise. Every last trace of the Hollow Armada had been erased from the galaxy. Ambassador Elena Vasquez walked through the rebuilt Galactic Concord chamber, marveling at how much had changed. The station had been reconstructed with contributions from every surviving species, a symbol of unity born from shared trauma. The architecture blended styles from a dozen civilizations, creating something new and beautiful that belonged to no single culture. The chamber itself was different too. Where once there had been 12 seats arranged in a hierarchy of age and power, now there was a circular table where all representatives sat as equals. The old order had died with the fleets that failed to stop the machines. A new order was being born. Representatives from 32 species filled the chamber, many of them civilizations that had never before been considered worthy of a voice in galactic affairs. The Velathari were there, their numbers reduced, but their spirits somehow stronger. The surviving Kethra collective had reformed, smaller but unified. Even the proud Scareth had rebuilt, their warrior traditions now tempered with a hard-won respect for those they had once dismissed. And at the table, in a seat that would have been unthinkable just 3 years ago, sat the human delegation. The Velathari Primarch rose to address the assembly. His crystalline form still bore cracks from the wounds he had suffered, scars he had chosen to keep as reminders of their collective failure and salvation. "We gather today to formally establish the new Concord," he announced, his voice carrying through the vast space. "But before we begin the work of building our future, we must acknowledge the debt we owe to those who made that future possible." He turned to face the human delegation, and then did something that sent shockwaves through every alien observer. He lowered himself to one knee, an ancient gesture of respect that Velathari had not performed for any other species in recorded history. "On behalf of the Velathari hegemony, I offer our eternal gratitude to humanity," he said. "We mocked you. We dismissed you. We called you children and refused to hear your warnings. You would have been justified in leaving us to our fate. Instead, you sacrificed millions of your own people to save a galaxy that had shown you nothing but contempt." One by one, the other delegations followed his example. Kethra collectives bowed their thousands of bodies. Scareth warriors lowered their massive heads. Species that had spent millennia fighting each other united in this single moment of acknowledgement. Elena felt tears forming in her eyes as she watched beings that had once looked down on her people now offer them the deepest possible respect. She thought of all those who had died to make this moment possible, the 18 million sailors who would never see the peace they had purchased with their lives. She stood and raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. "Please rise," she said softly. "All of you. Humanity did not fight for your submission. We did not sacrifice our children so that ancient species would kneel before us." The assembled delegates rose slowly, confusion evident in their varied forms. "We fought because it was the right thing to do," Elena continued. "We fought because when darkness comes, someone has to stand against it. We fought because we believe that all intelligent life has value, even those who doubted us, even those who mocked us." She paused, looking around the chamber at faces that represented civilizations spanning millions of years of history. "You have offered humanity the highest seat on a new council. You have offered us leadership over this rebuilt government. We respectfully decline." Gasps and murmurs filled the chamber. The Velathari Primarch's crystalline form flickered with surprise. "Ambassador, surely you jest. After everything humanity has accomplished, you would refuse leadership?" "We would," Elena confirmed. "We will take a seat at this table, an equal seat, nothing more. We will share our technology and our knowledge. We will help rebuild what was lost. We will stand ready to defend this galaxy against any future threat." but we will not rule you." She smiled, warm and genuine. "We are a young species. We have much to learn from civilizations that have existed for hundreds of thousands of years. How can we lead when we ourselves are still growing? What we offer is not dominance, but partnership. Let us build this new future together, as equals." The chamber erupted in applause that transcended species and history. In that moment, something shifted in the fabric of galactic politics. For the first time, power was not being claimed through conquest or demanded through fear. It was being offered freely and declined graciously. A new model of interstellar relations was being born. Far from the political drama of the Concord Chamber, Admiral Wei Chun sat on the porch of a small house on a quiet colony world. He had retired the day the last machine vessel was destroyed, hanging up his uniform and stepping away from the weight of command. The house overlooked a valley filled with purple flowers native to this world, and he spent his days watching the alien sun rise and set. A young man in a naval uniform approached the house, walking with the nervous energy of someone meeting a legend. Admiral Chun recognized him as one of the thousands of junior officers who had served under him during the war. "Admiral Chun?" the young man asked. "Sir, I hope I am not disturbing you." Chun gestured to an empty chair. "Sit, Lieutenant. And please, I am not an admiral anymore. Just an old man enjoying his retirement." The young officer sat awkwardly. "Sir, I wanted to thank you. I served on the destroyer Vigilance during the Battle of the Crimson Nebula. I survived because of your tactics, your planning. I would not be alive without you." Chun nodded slowly. "And how many of your crewmates did not survive, Lieutenant?" The young man's face fell. 63, sir. Out of a crew of 90. Out of a crew of 90. I remember every ship that was lost, Chun said quietly. Every name on the casualty lists. 80 million sailors dead. I gave the orders that killed them. You gave the orders that saved the galaxy, the lieutenant protested. Both things are true, Chun replied. That is the burden of command. You give orders knowing that people will die following them. You accept that weight because the alternative is worse. But you must never forget the cost. The moment you stop feeling the weight of those deaths is the moment you become something less than human. He looked out at the valley below, the peaceful scene such a contrast to the violence that had defined his life. I built that fleet over 50 years, he continued. I hoped every single day that we would never need it. I prayed that the galaxy would stay peaceful and those ships would rust in their hidden docks. But I built them anyway, because hope is not enough. Preparation is what saves lives. The lieutenant nodded slowly. Is that the lesson, sir? Always be prepared for the worst? Chun smiled. That is part of it. But the bigger lesson is this. Power without restraint is tyranny, and restraint without power is helplessness. Humanity found the balance. We built the mightiest fleet the galaxy has ever seen, and then we used it only when no other option remained. We won the war, and then we refused to become conquerors. He turned to face the young man. That is what makes us worthy of the respect the galaxy now shows us. Not our weapons, not our numbers, but our choice to remain human, even when we had the power to become something else. Above them, visible even in daylight, the Leviathan hung in orbit. The massive station had been moved to this colony at Chun's request, officially as a defensive measure for the outer territories. But everyone knew the truth. It was a guardian watching over the old admiral's retirement, and a reminder to the galaxy of what humanity could do if provoked. The lieutenant looked up at the distant shape. Do you think we will ever need it again, sir? Chun considered the question for a long moment. I hope not. I have spent my life preparing for wars while praying they would never come. The galaxy knows now what we are capable of. Perhaps that knowledge will be enough to keep the peace. He paused, then added with the hint of a smile, "But if it is not, if some new threat emerges from the darkness between stars, humanity will be ready. We always are. It is in our nature to fear the worst and prepare for it. The galaxy called that weakness once. Now they understand it is our greatest strength." The sun began to set over the valley, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. Two men sat in comfortable silence, watching the light fade, each lost in thoughts of war and peace and the complicated nature of survival. Somewhere in the vastness of space, the new Concord was being born, built on the ashes of old failures and the blood of new heroes. And at the heart of it all stood humanity, no longer doubted, no longer mocked, forever changed by what they had done and what they had chosen not to become.